Ready to enjoy blazing fast speeds with 5G? Looking forward to enjoying entertainment options such as immersive video and wireless holograms, which were hard to come by in the past? Well, there is good news for you, at least depending upon which city you live in. We are one step closer in our tryst with new high-speed services. The decks have reportedly been cleared for the Department of Telecommunications or DOT to auction the 5G spectrum. In fact, India might see 5G services being showcased on 15th August. The Telecom Regulatory Authority of India or TRAI has left it to the DOT to take a decision on three crucial issues. The first is the validity period of spectrum assignment. The second is the deferment of auction in the 27.5 GHz to 28.5 GHz band. And the third is the quantum of spectrum that will be reserved for BSNL and MTNL. As a result, the whole process has become simple. Going ahead, the Digital Communications Commission or DCC will clear the 5G spectrum auction. Subsequently, it will have to be cleared in the Union Cabinet. Finally, the DOT could begin the auction process in June. On their part, the telcos have said that if everything goes well, limited 5G services rollout might be seen by the end of this year. Telcos had demanded a 90% reduction in the 3.5 GHz spectrum base price compared to the regulator's recommendation in 2019. But this demand has not been met. However, at 317 crore rupees for a pan-India 1 MHz of spectrum, the base price has been reduced by 36% for a validity of 20 years. While it had earlier wanted a 30-year period validity, the DOT took an about turn and suggested a 20-year period. According to a recent Business Standard report, the base price for a 30-year period would be 1.5 times the base price for 20 years. As a result, the base price would have been 476 crore rupees, which would be pretty close to the 491 crore rupees recommended by TRAI in 2019. And the telcos had made it clear that the price being pegged so high would discourage them from taking part in the auctions. The 30-year period was one of the elements of the telecom package announced by the government. However, the cabinet can still take a call on any further reductions.
The 20 years validity with the same base price or the base price as suggested by TRAI, which is almost 300 crores plus in the 3.3 gigahertz band, where you need at least 100 megahertz for the rollout, I think is still extremely high in context of the Indian market. If I were to just compare this with some of the other global markets, including Italy, Germany, South Korea, the numbers in India are still 50 to 70% higher than what those geographies are. And I know that the comparison is always given to the population that we have, but most important parameter is what is that population paying and the telecom revenues which are getting generated. So India on the revenue side for telecom, which is a cumulative revenue which all the operators are generating at industry level, is still much lower than these countries. Hence, the base price is higher. 20 years is a norm. We look at most of the countries have done their auctions for 20 years. So whilst TRAI brought down the price, but for a 30-year period, the price kind of goes back to their originally determined price. But even the price which is being brought down is much higher than any of the international benchmarks that we have, taking into account the revenues that are being generated. The impact of that on the industry and on the operators, of course, on the 5G rollout is that we'll actually see a very muted auction, and we'll see the rollouts being to the tier one kind of cities. Unlikely that we'll see a lot of penetration immediately onto the hinterland. I mean, there are multiple aspects there. Of course, apart from the investment in spectrum, you need to make sure that there's a backhaul fiber which is available, because 5G means really no latency. I mean, that's the whole purpose of 5G. So in order to have that, you need to have fiber connectivity, investment into fiber, business case for it, keeping in mind the price of spectrum that you pay. I think unlikely we'll see all that happening at an accelerated pace or at a fast pace or even at a normative pace.
Right now, apart from the business case, right, the balance sheets of 2 out of 3 telcos is stretched. So we are not expecting these telcos to bid aggressively. The situation is very different from what it was, let's say, 10, 12 years back when there were lot many telcos around and there was a proper auction kind of a situation. Secondly, a player like, let's say, Jio, right, which is the largest in terms of, let's say, subscriber base, would like to, let's say, wait out for some time for further price cuts or further price reduction. Because I mean they can obviously afford to wait out, and they know that there will not be any kind of aggressive bidding by the other two players.
On the issue of private captive networks, TRAI had earlier recommended that enterprises should be allowed to get spectrum directly from DoT to run their own networks in remote locations. However, it has now changed tack, and both the DoT and the regulator are on the same page on this contentious issue. Now, TRAI has reportedly said that a demand assessment would be necessary for enterprises to get spectrum directly. Telcos, on their part, have highlighted that the bulk of the business in 5G would come from enterprises, which is a trend seen globally.
Impacted 3G spectrum. In fact, the auction which was done in 2010 was the one which really was the inflection point where, because of the investments and the commitments which were made by the industry, they were unable to lever the or juice the spectrum out enough in order to recover the investments. Now, will that repeat itself in 5G? I mean, as I said, everybody is far more cautious. The sector's financial position, as we all know, is not as healthy as it was in 2010 or when the auctions were done for both 3G and 4G or post.
While the current auction might not prove to be a similarly negative inflection point, it is worth asking that under the present terms and conditions, will an appreciable number of Indians be able to take advantage of 5G services?
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.